RV Kids TV. Hey guys, so what I'm going to do is give you a little how to winterize your RV. We have had a lot of people inquiring about how we do our process. Honestly, this is my first time doing my winterizing, but it went very well. I already did it, but I'm going to do a little summary for you on how it was done. Fairly easy process. I went to my local Walmart and got myself RV and Marine antifreeze. It's pink. It's going to be a surefire way for you to know it is RV antifreeze, because it'll be pink. This one here goes to -50. Our area in Pennsylvania here, we never get into the negatives other than wind chill, and if it is, it's like -4, -5, maybe hit -10. But this was not quite $3 a gallon. A lot of people ask, how many gallons do I need? How much do I need? Well, it's all going to depend on your rig. This particular rig is a Fleetwood. It's a 2004 Fleetwood Caravan EXT. It's the CB25. It's triple bunk. But what we have on this one is a single bathroom with a shower, toilet, and sink, and then I have in the kitchen as a double left and right, normal, the traditional sink there. 3 gallons worked for me, but that's gonna vary depending upon if you have a bath and a half or what all exterior kitchen, things like that. So the first step we're going to do is go to the hot water heater. There are 2 spots on a hot water heater that will help you drain your hot water heater. Mine is a 6 gallon, so I have to get that 6 gallons out of the hot water heater before I go to my next step. So the bottom here, there's a plug, and then at the very top there is a pressure valve. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a socket. Now my particular drain is a 1 1/16 inch socket, and then if you convert it over to metric, it's a 27 millimeter. So you're going to use that socket. You're going to pull that out. You're going to need a socket because you'll see when you open yours up, there's not much room in there to get a wrench in. But you're going to take that out. Now it's very important to be careful because there is a long, I think it's called a node. It's on the end of that drain. Okay, so the water is gonna start flowing out at that point. I just let it sit there and let it run its thing out. The rest of the process, that will be unhooked. That way you can make sure you get as much of that water out as possible. Now, the reason I'm pointing out to you your top part, your valve, is because if you open this valve up and it's simply by this little tab here, you're gonna pull on it and pull it straight up, and it will stay open for you. That's gonna let air draw in so that your drain plug, it comes out of your drain a lot quicker. Now while that's draining, you can move to your next step. Your next step is going to be, depending upon how your process is, I'm just showing you my process. I actually went with the option to blow my lines out with air. And what I did was I got this Camco nozzle. It threads into your city water, your shoreline, and then it has a little end on the little tip on here that it allows you to use your air compressor, and all you need is an air chock, like you would use to blow your tires up on your bicycle or your car. I used my Craftsman, it's a 1.5 horsepower 3 gallon air compressor. That's all you need. Make sure though that you have a regulator on it, which allows you, mine's all old and stuff here, but it allows you to turn your pressure down, adjust your pressure of what's going out your line. I set mine at 20 psi. You don't want to use too high of an air pressure because you'll blow out you can blow your water lines out using too much pressure. So then, before I hook that line up, the air line up to my connector, I went around to the other side.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you this important message.
Now, before I actually hooked up the air to the line, there's one most important part about blowing out your water lines and putting antifreeze into them. That is going to be this pipe right here. It is a bypass for your hot water heater. You do not want to get antifreeze into your hot water heater. That can cause troubles for you next season with an inoperable water heater and cause more expense for you than you need. So what normally, if your rig doesn't have a bypass already on it, I don't know if they have them on from factory anymore or not, but this being a 2004, I had to get a bypass. Normally, this line is your line coming in from outside where you hook up your hose. The water goes in the bottom end of your bottom end of your hot water heater, and then once it's heated up, and you ask it for hot water, it's going to come out this top valve and go down in throughout your rig to your faucets. What this bypass does, is there's a little knob on the bottom here, a valve that will shut the water off to your hot water heater, and it bypasses it up to the top of your hot water heater, and allows it to completely skip filling any water into your hot water heater. Very, very important. So with that being turned to the bypass mode, then that's when I started using my compressor and blowing out the lines.
We now return to your regular scheduled program.
On the other side of my rig is, at the very bottom, I have two outlets. Now this could be located in different spots on any rig. Mine's towards the door side, tail end of the rig. Now what those are, they are the lowest point of your water lines. What I did was I opened up those one at a time, and then when I connected the air line, started blowing out the water. It's important to get to your lowest point first, because what that does is there's probably, in this rig, there's probably a good 4 or 5 gallons of water that run through the regular water lines. So by opening these up first, I'm able to save from having to dump water blowing out lines in my sinks down into my gray tank, and then having to empty out the gray tank again. So you open those up, turn the air on. Now it will be pressurized, so it's going to shoot out pretty good for you. So if you have my wife was helping me, she got a little splattered by it hitting the black top here. So definitely once the air is blowing out by itself with no water dripping from the one line, then you go to your second line. Second line is your hot water side. First one is your cold side. After I went through and let all the water out of my lowest point, which was those exterior outlets, then I went into the sink. Start with the hot water. Drain the hot water when it stopped dripping. Turn that one off. Then my wife turned on the cold water one. Drain any excess water that's going up into this faucet out. Next step is she went to our vanity and turned the sink hot water on, and then the cold water as they finished the water dripping out of it. Then she did the shower. One most important thing about the shower is not only to drain it from your hot and your cold water faucet, but also if you have the shower nozzle that you can hang up at the top of your shower for your shower, make sure you blow the air through that and get all the water out of there, because that line will freeze, and then you'll be replacing your shower setup. Don't forget the toilet. Has water running to it as well, so that you can flush it. So make sure all that water is blown out and drained out of there before you're completely finished with your airline. Now, some rigs, the newer rigs, can avoid having to buy a pump. they already have a pump set into it for the next step. The next step is going to be taking your antifreeze and pumping it into your water lines. So what I did was I found this really cool little, it's a pump. This one's a hand pump. It's a multi-use pump. This one will do liquids and water, or I'm sorry, liquids and air. So what I did was you take your one end and put this end into your antifreeze bottle, and then the other end has I used the bicycle pump end, and I connected that to that Camco air fitting. And then what I did was I just pumped fluid. It draws it out of your bottle, antifreeze bottle, through the pump, out there into your water lines. My wife opened up every one of the water outlets, every one of the water supplies, the hot water and cold water on every sink and the shower and the toilet, one at a time. And I kept pumping antifreeze through until she started seeing pink. After the hot water on the sink was showing pink, then went to the cold water, and then went to the bathroom, did the same thing through every water supply, including the toilet. And then we also, at the very end, that we did it reverse them, and at the very end, that exterior, the lowest part of the water supply, those exterior valves, then we opened them up to double check. I pumped more into it, and to double check to make sure all the pink antifreeze is coming through. But this was only $8. This pump was only like $8 at Walmart. It worked. It saved me a lot. If I didn't have it, I would have had to gamble that the air blew all the water out of the lines and totally have to skip that step, which is pretty important to me to make sure that the water lines throughout the whole rig have antifreeze in them. Now, as you can see here, there's pink in everywhere. That's what that's doing. Is very important to dump it down your drains as well. I put about a quarter of a gallon down each one of the drains, quarter to a half. It's important to do that because what you have in, let's see if it's visible here. Yeah, sorry about the mess, all the stuff in here, but this is you want to make sure your pet, I believe it's called a petcock, but you can see how it has the U in your line. That U is a design so that it keeps any gases from the gray tank and avoid them from coming back up through venting through your sink and giving you an odor in your rig. So what it does is it stays filled with water, so that it doesn't allow any air to go through, burp back through. So it's important to dump antifreeze down the drains so that it pushes all that water out, and now you have it filled with antifreeze. Because if you don't dump antifreeze down there, that's an area that water can freeze and expand, and then you'll start getting cracks. And then when you come out springtime to start go camping, you're going to have water everywhere that any of those are. One thing that pouring antifreeze down all the drains and pouring extra down, what it does is it sends some down into your gray tank as well. That way, if there is any water residue in your gray tank, which there will be because you're pushing some of that water through your drain system down into your gray tank, what that does is the antifreeze will be in there and help keep it from freezing and swelling for you. I also, as an extra precaution, dump antifreeze into the black tank just in case you happen to miss some fluids in your last draining. It'll also once again help keep it from freezing for you. So I dumped it a good bit down there so that it prevents that from happening. I also put some in the top just to keep the seal from allowing any gases to come up through, that if there would happen to be any odors or gases in the black tank through the winter. That'll help prevent it from pushing through for you, and it also keeps your seal wet so that it doesn't dry out, that seal around your toilet. Side note, before you dump the pink antifreeze down into your black tank, you want to make sure you flushed your black tank out. The newer units already have that built in, where you just hook your hose up to your black flush valve, and it takes care of that for you. But on these older units, you can get one of these. Walmart sells them, RV places sell them. What it is, it hooks up to your water supply, and then it pushes water through to the very end. Very end has a nozzle on it. That nozzle has two outlets on it. One's on one side of this brass fitting, the other one's on the other side, so it actually spins for you. So you can, when you turn it on, you stick it down in your toilet. When you turn it on, it has a high pressure spinning to it, and you're able to spray around all through your black tank. It's important to do because when you're with your black tank being empty, if there's any toilet paper or any solids that are still in that tank, it'll dry and it'll be very hard to get out next season for you. Your sensors that are in there's 3 sensors, actually 4, I believe. You have when you push your button to look at your lights to see how full your black tank is, you have your full, your 3/4, half, 1/4, and empty. Those are all sensors that are on the sidewall of your tank. If there's anything on them, it'll give you false readings, which is a common thing through the black tank environment, is that you get false readings because there's toilet paper or there's solids that are stuck to those sensors. So this will help ensure that you get everything off the sidewalls and the top and the bottom of your black tank. After all those steps are done, I come back over to my hot water heater, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hot water cap back in. Now be very careful, because with the weight of that rod being on the end of it, when you're putting it back in, make sure your threads are lined up properly before you start trying to tighten it back on, or you'll cross thread your threads here, and then all you're going to do at that point is you're going to be replacing a hot water heater. Now what I also am going to do for precautions is I'm actually not going to completely tighten that up. That way it does leave a little bit open there, that if water would be in the bottom of my hot water heater and it would start to freeze at all, any leftover residue, it'll give it an outlet to go to instead of sitting there and expanding through any of my hot water heater. I would just leave it off, but we tend to have, and I'm surrounded by farmers' fields, we tend to have mice, and I don't want them making a home in my hot water heater. So that all being said, I close my valve off, my pressure valve off, and you have completed the steps to winterizing your rig. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm probably going to, don't forget about your freshwater tank. Make sure that's drained out, and I also put about a half a gallon of the antifreeze in there as well. And then in the springtime, I'll flush everything out with a bleach water mixture, which in the spring I will also have a video for you on how to de-winterize your rig. But once that's all done, the only thing I'm going to do is I have to get a tarp I'm going to tarp the top of the roof of my rig, just to keep the weather off of it. I'm not going to go, we opted not to go with a full cover, because a lot of reviews are saying that the covers rub on the sides, on your sidewalls of your rig, and can do some pretty hard damage to it. So we're just going to tarp the roof just to help minimize any kind of possible water leaks on the vents and everything up top. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully that helps you with your winterizing process.